Good afternoon once again. You're welcome to Theories and Methods in Information Systems. My name is Professor Richard Boateng. I'll be taking you through the third session where we'll be discussing selecting theories in IS research. We have in previous sessions, we have talked about how to select how theories are used in research. Today, we're talking about how to select theories in IS research. And so how theories are developed will be the first part we'll look at, and the second part will be selecting theories in IS research. And we are looking at chapter 5 of the book Research Made Easy. Actually, the fourth edition is a very good text for what we'll be discussing today, especially on the issues on how theories are developed, and then some of the issues concerning how how to select a theory in IS research, theories in research, how to select a theory in research or in IS research. So this book, chapter 1, and the other chapters play a very key role in what I'm teaching. Some of the theories are picked from this book. You may want to get this free. This version is free online. You can download it and you can use it for your studies. Now, in the previous session, we talked about what a research framework is, and we thought that a research framework frames a research. That means that it defines the variables and concepts and the relationship between them in carrying out our research, giving it direction for our research. And we said that researchers develop research frameworks either by passing through a theory and then they modify the theory to adapt it to fit the study's objectives and the study's the study's objectives and the study's questions and or purpose, and then it goes when it is then modified or adapted, it becomes suggested relationships. So we call it a conceptual framework. And then we also mentioned that sometimes in the absence of the theory, when there is no appropriate theory or the theories are not sufficient in exhausting the questions, researchers draw on other concepts from literature or previous literature to be able to support the theory. And in that sense, we can develop research frameworks either from a theory or from the literature or a combination of the literature and the theory. Now, anytime that we develop a research framework, we are suggesting the relationships that could occur to be able to explain the phenomenon we are studying, predict the phenomenon we are studying, or help us to understand the phenomenon we are studying. In that sense, the research framework is suggesting relationships that could be. So we call it, because it's a suggested relationship, we call it conceptual framework. Concepts that are suggested as guideline, as a guide to be able to carry out our research. Now, we also mentioned that theories are made out of 4 building blocks: the constructs, which are the abstract concepts, which are usually defined at the high level of abstraction; the propositions, which tells us the relationship between the concepts, the constructs. For example, if you have a area of a rectangle, that's length times breadth. The length and the breadth are the constructs, and then expressed in the form of a variable L and B. And then when you multiply them, those are the relationships. So you multiply them, then the logic is what makes it what the essence of the proposition and then the construct. So in this area, in this particular example, the area of the rectangle is the logic, the glue that brings everything together and gives relevance. So first we want to find the area. We are multiplying the length times the breadth. So the area is acts like the glue that connects the theoretical constructs and then provides meaning, relevance, or relationship being studied. Now, all the theories have got assumptions. For even the rectangle is assumed to be a straight line or straight surface, but not always the truth. And then there are boundary conditions to it. At what level do they apply? Is that the individual level? Is that the macro level? Is that the organizational level? Or is it a meta level outside of cross-border relationships? What level is this theory or that we are proposed going to apply? Is it applying in the macro level, in the micro level, or the meso level, that's at the industry level, or it's applying in different ways that I may have not mentioned. Okay, so beyond that, we also talked about the ways theories are represented. We said that theories can be presented as a factor-based model in which a group of factors are pointing to an outcome. And then there's a process where there are different steps in an activity leading to an outcome. And then there's a hierarchy in which we try to say that some are tend to be more priority than others. So in that sense, we can use a hierarchy to be able to show the relationship between the variables and what impact they are having on whatever we are studying. Then we have maps and coordinates like the demand and supply curve. And then we have gap analysis that look at the discrepancy between what we expect and what we receive. These are kind of gap analytical tools that exist. And then last one, there are some studies that don't have any diagram or schematic diagram to even tell that you are using a theory, but you may know that those studies, either the concept or the category or the questions tend to guide the study. So to some extent, we can represent theories in literature from these dimensions that have, it's not exhaustive, but it gives you the popular dimensions that people express themselves when they are using a research framework or a theory. Now, we also talked about how the theories are applied. We mentioned that the theories can be applied as assets. We take the theory and use it as is, like the TOE framework, and just apply it in our study as is. Then theory as the foundation factors from literature. So the theory is selected, but it's not inadequate. So we read the literature and find other factors to add on to the theory to study our phenomenon. Combining multiple choice. Maybe the question one needs a different theory, question two needs a different theory, question three needs a different theory, and then you need to put them together. So you can have a situation in which the researchers have to combine multiple theories for you to get out what they are looking for. The example is the PEM model and the CPT model that will be framed to be able to create another model. Okay. Then we also got combining theories and literature. So in this scenario, you're combining the theories, but you're also adding literature to be able to give it direction in whatever in whichever way we seek to apply it. So we will pick the theory, we'll pick the literature and combine them, and they become intertwined together. And then we use to carry out the study. But we will have multiple theories in that. We could have multiple theories in that. And then we also got multiple theories and multiple literature. So the theories are inadequate. The discussion in the literature has got some flaws, and we need to be able to embrace both of them to be able to carry out the study. So multiple theories and multiple literature can also be a scenario that we could face. Then there are times that we also have only literature only. The literature only is the one that is discussed. There may not be any framework or diagram in it, but still the literature may point out certain factors that can actually frame the study. Lastly, no theories used. There are sometimes, in a particular work, no choice ever mentioned. Is there no choice ever mentioned? And that could be the fact that the person may be using the questions as the research framework to carry out the study. Mhm. The person may be using the research questions as the framework to carry out the study. That's what I mean in the no theory used. Okay, so let's get to today's one. How are theories developed? How are theories developed? Okay. Now, empirically, theories can be developed can emerge from a systematic observation or experimentation. Researchers will collect data and try to identify patterns or relations that will suggest certain theoretical constructs. And because of that, we can say they can theorize based on the data they have collected. In trying to do so, the researchers can use either inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning, or abductive reasoning. And these are ways in which the empirical data could actually be reviewed, and that can lead to a particular theory. So, for example, in inductive reasoning, the approach involves observing specific instances, then drawing the general conclusions from them. So you have to look at specific things that are happening, occurrences even in the data, and then look at it through either experiments or world observations, then generate patterns and regularities by what you observe. Good. So and that which will lead to a new theory. For example, if a researcher observes that social media increases among teenagers during school holidays, the teacher may the researcher might use this observation to propose a theory that suggests that teenagers tend to social media to find social interactions when they are not in school. And this is because of what he has observed. Yeah. So in this scenario, we are trying to say that the person starts from that thing specific and come up with a generalized theory out of it, a general theory that can be implemented by others. Okay. So then the next one has to do with deductive reasoning. This is what is the dominant in many of the research works that we see. So theories can also be derived from existing theories. So usually there's an existing theory that you are picking ideas from. Okay. And then after picking the theory, the person then can go to a logical deduction to generate new theoretical insights or propositions after carrying out carrying out some level of analysis on the existing theories or relations that you postulated. So it said that Einstein's theory of general relativity was partly developed by deducing implications of the equivalence principle on gravity. Now, what then happens in this scenario is that a researcher might start with a hypothesis that lower economic status leads to higher stress levels. By conducting surveys, various socioeconomic groups, and measuring stress markers, they can test this hypothesis and potentially generate a theory if the data consistently support the hypothesis. So that means that in this one, we could actually start from an existing theory, hypothesize what could be happening, and then go and test it. And then it could be that our outcome could be more than what our outcome could actually confirm the hypothesis, and then that would be okay. Or may not confirm the hypothesis, that gives us room new because we have not been able to find evidence for the hypothesis, it becomes a little bit different. So we have to try and now postulate why didn't that happen, and what really new relationships can be actually be professed or be suggested in that particular scenario. So that's what could happen. Okay. So the next one is adaptive reasoning. So I'm going to explain adaptive reasoning, and I'll come back to look at and compare all the three. We talked about deductive reasoning. Now we come to adaptive reasoning. Now, adaptive reasoning is often referred to as the best explanation in a way that, or it's a form of reasoning that begins with an incomplete set of observations and proceed to a likeliest possible explanation for a group of observations. So, what then happens is that in this particular type of reasoning, we would have observed something in practice or in the real world. For example, we see that there's an increasing health problems in the community following the chemical spill. So it is likely that the researcher will start with a theory that is a kind of a known premise that this could be the cause, but doesn't necessarily mean that it is the actual cause. It may be the likely cause. And then it will go out and test it and see what are the likely explanations that could either refute or better explain the observation that he actually has seen in the real world. So in this particular scenario, the type of reasoning here is to be able to produce the most likely explanation for the phenomenon that we are trying to study. Now, why am I saying these things? These three things actually are hinged on the definition, on these three type of reasoning are hinged on the definition of or the definition of theory. We say a theory is a set of general propositions. That means a relation between constructs that are used as principles for understanding, describing, explaining, and predicting observed apparent relationship in observed phenomena. Now, that means that every time we have talked about a theory would have been developed from an observation made in a phenomena. And that theory would have helped us to be able to give us certain constructs and their relationships so that we can be able to explain, describe, or understand or predict that phenomena. So whenever you have a theory, you always ask yourself that the theory came from an observation. Now how, and then out of that, then the certain propositions were actually proposed, were actually formulated. So whatever you have in a theory, whichever dimensions or the form of reasoning that you're going to use, know that there's going to be an observed phenomena, there's going to be propositions that are actually being communicated here. So let's look at it again, all the three. First of all, let's take the deductive reason. A deductive reason would like to start from existing theory. And then you use that existing theory to be able to hypothesize what the relation that could be observed in the phenomenon we are trying to study. So what is this could be the relationship that can be used to explain what we are trying to study. So for example, somebody says that coming to class, attendance has a positive relationship or a positive influence over grade or on grade. That means that coming to class often will help you get a better grade. Now that's a hypothesis that somebody may start from that's a premise in a deductive reason, and you go and do the observation, look at different accounts or different scenarios of attendances to be able to see whether there's a confirmation for that hypothesis. So we say that deductive reasoning starts from a general rule, that's the theory, an existing theory that somebody may have postulated, or do an existing theory about society or about life, and then he will take that one, use it to postulate a hypothesis, go and test the hypothesis, and then come up with a specific conclusion on the phenomenon. However, deductive reasoning doesn't like do that. Deductive reasoning like to start with the data. So there's data there, and then you look at it, or observations that exist, and you see that what are the patterns do I see in that observation? What are the patterns do I see in that particular data? And that pattern, can I be able to observe certain contrasts and see their relationship? So can I come up with some propositions or hypotheses that could be existing? And if those propositions can be formed, then remember the theory can be deduced. The theory can then be induced. That's what I would say. So we come from a specific observation in the real world, and then we lead to a general conclusion of why it is occurring. So looking at the two, all of them have to have some type of an outcome that tries to explain what is happening or predict what is happening or try to help us understand what is happening or describe what is happening. Okay, so we have the theory going to hypothesis, observation, and confirmation with the deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning, observation starts hypothesis and a pattern, propositions or hypothesis, and it goes to theory. But then adaptive reasoning is like coming out of an assumption or an inference from based on the observation that we have. So we are not very sure. We are assuming that this could be the relationship that could have caused that, could have led to the observation that we are observing. So this is the assumption that we have. So like I said, somebody said there's an oils there is an increase in maybe pollution due to an oil spill. So we then say that the oil spill would have led to the pollution. So that's maybe the assumption that we may have. Then we, based on that assumption, may come up with certain hypotheses, and then we go and test them and see which is the best one that explains the observation that we have. So adaptive reasoning can be kind of an incomplete observation that leads to the best prediction, probabilistic prediction. Whilst deductive reasoning comes from a general rule and go to more certain relationships. That this is what was occurring, this is what is supported, this is not what is supported. So it's going to more a certain relationship or a certain conclusion or specific conclusion. However, inductive reasoning and then adaptive reasoning are more probabilistic. So probabilistic. So meaning that whenever we actually go through inductive reasoning, we have an observation, then we go through a pattern, we define a pattern out of the observation, it then leads us to certain relationship that we may postulate in terms of the hypothesis or propositions, and then based on that we have our theory. Adaptive reasoning will then start with observation, but we are not very sure. We are not observed everything. We are not very sure. So we end up, we have an incomplete observation and we come up with an assumption. That assumption then starts to tell us, okay, if this is what we are assuming, this could be the possible relationship that could occur within the construct that we are trying to study. And then in that way, we try to say which of them is much more certain to happen, which one or probable to happen. Then we end up with more of the best guess or the best prediction. That's what adaptive reasoning does. In all of these ones, we are trying to to be able to come up with a set of general propositions which are going to use as principles for explaining, principles for describing, principles for predicting, principles for understanding apparent relationships in a observed phenomena. That's what we are going to do. But for us to arrive at that phase, we can go to different types of reasoning states. These reasoning states, somebody will say, can you combine two? Technically, some people argue that the adaptive reasoning tend to combine both inductive and deductive. Because sometimes we have observation that you are trying to induce a pattern that you lead you to come up with an inference. And then you go and test it in a hypothesis form and then get the best guess. The best guess may best prediction. So we are combining a little bit. You start with an induction and then go back to deduction, and you can even go back to induction again. So in terms of combining, if any of them, if you can combine any of the reasonings, adaptive reasoning tend to embrace both deductive and inductive reasoning. Okay. Now, another way that of researchers develop theories is by synthesis, combining multiple theories or insights from different fields into so that you can generate a new set of theory. So it's more of an interdisciplinary approach. You have heard of new areas like bioinformatics, which is emerging biology, computer science, and information technology. Now, all of these have their existing theories. If I put them together as a one discipline or one area, I may come up with new theories in that in bioinformatics. That's converging that's emerging knowledge from biology, knowledge from computer science, knowledge from information technology to be able to and help us understand bioscience or bioinformatics or whichever discipline may be related to. But the difference here is that I'm not just taking an information system theory to study bioinformatics. I'm not just taking an biology theory to study it. I'm not taking a computer science theory. What I'm doing is I'm combining concepts from each of them to come up with new theory. That's why I say it's a synthesis from available apparent relationships in different disciplines. So what can I learn? What can I pick from computer science? What can I pick from biology? What can I pick from information technology? Theoretical innovation comes in when sometimes theories are developed by proposing novel frameworks that challenge existing paradigms. So we want to deviate from the existing paradigm. We say research. So somebody thinks through and says, okay, this could be another way of thinking about it. Look at the way of looking at the whole issue we are trying to study. And then this an example can be the fact that when you see it with creative thinkers, we try to go out of the box to redefine our existing understanding of things in society. So quantum theory, for instance, was a revolutionary, concept because it introduced concepts that were not explained by classical physics. It just deviated from classical physics, went beyond that one, and started giving us a new things that we should think about. So we call that one more of a theoretical innovation. So what have we said? We have empirical research, synthesis, and theoretical innovation. Empirical research, we can either see is by studying patterns in data and using to be able to come up with a theory. But how can we do that? We can either do abductive reasoning, we can do deductive reasoning, we can do inductive reasoning for the empirical research. Then from there, we have the synthesis and then theoretical innovation. I hope we have been able to appreciate it very well. We can discuss it further in our tutorials. So now let's continue. Selecting theories in research. Now, before we can select a theory in research, I will advise that we should understand why we have a theory. We said in the definition of a theory that there are a set of general propositions used as principle for explaining what apparent relationships and observed phenomena. Now, so it means that a theory works with a phenomena. So you have to understand these things. And what is in a phenomena? A phenomena is embodiment of concepts. So we are going to look at the phenomena and then how it links to a theory and then links into a method. Now, if we first start with concept, a phenomenon can have several or combination of concepts. A concept can generate several perspectives and hence several questions. A measurable concept is what we call a construct. Okay, so when we are going to do it, when we are developing theories, we actually develop theories based on what we have observed in a phenomenon. So if we want to study a phenomenon in society, we have to start, we can use the theory to help us be able to study it. So for example, I have somebody has developed a behavioral theory, a theory of planned behavior to explain why people tend to behave in a particular way, or in terms of planning that behavior, how people behave in a particular way. So if I have anything that has to be about a behavior, for example, the behavior of people of consumers or students towards banking products. If I want to study that behavior, because it's a behavior I'm trying to study. I can draw on the behavior, one of the behavioral theories or technology behavioral theories like theory of planned behavior, and I can use that one to study because I'm studying behavior. So if my concept is well understood, I can be able to choose the right theory to study it. Do you understand me? Because theories are built to for us to be able to explain concepts. So whenever I have a concept to study, I can ask myself, is there an existing theory for me to study that concept? Is there an existing theory for me to study that concept? Good. So theories are a set of propositions relation between construct and concept, which are used for principles for exploring, describing, explaining, and predicting apparent relationships in a phenomenon which have been observed. So we shall say apparent and observed phenomenon. Okay, now that apparent relationship observed phenomenon means that at the end of the day, if I choose a theory, it should be reflective on the phenomenon I want to study. Good. So I have a concept. The concept should direct me to choose appropriate theory. And when I have the theory, I can then be able to look for how to collect data about the theory. How can I learn about that, those constructs in my theory? So let's say that in the real world, data is collected through a process called method concerning constructs in order to unearth a phenomenon. The process can lead to answers to the research question. So what am I saying? We are saying that to be able to unearth and understand a phenomenon, we have to collect data, and the data is collected concerning the construct. The constructs are embedded in the theory. So our concept, it goes to theory and then it goes to method. Why? Because the theory, the method itself has to be studying the phenomenon through the constructs. The constructs are embedded in the theory. The theory tells us the relation between the constructs. And then that helps us to be able to understand the concept. Hey, I'm teaching. Interesting. So we have concept theory method or method theory concept. So we have a concept to study, we have the appropriate theory to use, and we have the appropriate method to study it. Now, questions are asked about a phenomenon. A phenomenon is likely linked to or indirectly linked to a concept. Better research focuses on the most relevant concept related to a phenomenon, which present the questions that have better opportunity for novelty and originality. What are we trying to say? For a given phenomenon, there may be several concepts in it, but which are the concept concerning the phenomenon has more room for you to contribute something new, a room for novelty. For example, entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is a very broad concept. In it, we have got female entrepreneurship. We have got student entrepreneurship. We have got creative entrepreneurs. We have got entrepreneurs who are in the tourism industry. We have got a diversity of entrepreneurs. So which of them do I want to study? Somebody said, I may want to study female entrepreneurship because that one has received less attention. So what we are trying to say is that a better research focuses on the most relevant concept related to the phenomenon. So if I have a phenomenon, I need to know, read the literature and find out what are the issues concerning that particular phenomenon. What are the gaps in the research so that I can choose the appropriate concept about the phenomenon that I'm going to, and that will help me to pose the right questions. So we have a good concept. We can be able to point out at the end of the what we are trying to study it. But how are we going to do that? You have the right questions to ask about a phenomenon. The phenomenon is linked to a concept, then it goes to a concept. Technically, your concept can be there, then they based on it, you choose the right phenomenon, and then we go to the right questions. Okay. So let's look into detail. Okay, I mean just so better research focus on the most relevant concepts related to a phenomenon. And that means that a theoretically or in abstract world, how does the phenomenon occur? What are the consistent constructs? And that could actually be a question that we ask under research. And then that could lead us to the method. So we have a concept, we have a theory to study the concept, then we have the method. The concept, theory to study the concept, and then the method. So we do research because the research process never ends. The research process doesn't end. Questions show up new each day. New concepts are developed. Choices are challenged. Methods are sometimes inconclusive. Humans push the limits of what is known, and we want more. So what are we saying, trying to say? Because we want to learn more, we want to know more. We are always asking for more knowledge. Okay. So let them see how best we can use these three concepts in research. Okay, so as we continue, now we have understood the concept theory method. Let's apply to information system. What's an information system? An information system is a formal, socio-technical, organizational system designed to collect, process, store, and distribute information. Now, when we say socio-technical, it means that it combines, there's a social dimension of an information system, there's a technical dimension. How do we say that? Because you have people, you have got structure, policy, combining with the tax or the process that you are supposed to use the technology for and the technology itself. So when you combine the tax, the process, the policy, the people, the structure, and the technology, you get the information systems. Usually the IT is just a component. When you add the other dimensions of the organization, then you get the information system. So the technology helps us to collect and process, store, and distribute information within the organization and beyond. Within an organization, we can have different types of information systems. So, for example, we have got one we call transaction processing system, which is for basic reporting. These are the ones which handle transactions. For example, if you go to the mall and go to malls like Game, malls like ShopRite in Africa here, you see that when you put you or you go to the go to a mall like a shopping mall like Asda or that of Tesco in the UK or even Costco in the US or Target in the US. One of the things that you end up realizing is that when you are buying something, you give the product a scan and then you give them money and then they give you back a receipt. And the receipt tells you how much you give and how much your products are, and then what is your balance. That receipt is coming out of a transaction processing. It's processing just the transaction. Then when you put the receipts together, then we can be able to make meaningful decisions concerning that receipt. For example, we can generate a list of all the things that were purchased in a week or a month, and that one we need a more of a management information system that will be used by the manager to manage all the information that have been captured through the transaction processing system. Then we can be able to use to generate certain type of reports that can support decision making or do some analysis of it that can be able to let us understand that if we increase this amount of produce or we increase we tend to buy how much more maybe drinks should we buy to be able to get this particular output, and we can be able to study that comparing it with other previous historical information. We are moving from decision making systems to be able to go to an executive support system that helps us to be able to do strategic decisions. So in the decision system, we can then be able to do a modeling of what is existing in terms of our data and be able to see different scenarios. Then decision support systems, in the executive support system, then we are at more of a strategic level where we can have different scenarios coming out of the decision support system, and then we can use it to make a decision. Now, organizations have different types of systems playing at different levels within the organization to be able to enhance the activities or the operations of that organization. Now, when you have this and you want to do a study, somebody can do a study on the transaction processing system, on the decision support system, or executive systems within the organization. But to be able to do that, we need to understand that, okay, so systems have got different types of uh, activities they go through for them to develop. So let's start from the fact that in an organization, we may need an information system. And that information system may be needed for a particular domain, for a hospital, for a shopping mall, for an SME, for an agricultural company, for marketing, or for finance. And then we will need to be able to design the system based on the technologies and the requirements of what we need it for. And then after design, we develop it. Then we have the technology itself. Then we need to deploy, we need to think about how we're going to make sure it becomes a part of the institution. So it has to be diffused to a system. People then adopt it. They adopt by acquiring, and then they make an investment in it to be able to implement it within the organization or deploy it across a larger organization. All the branches having it. Then they acquire it now in the deployment process. They may implement by installing it, training people, using it, and then provide support services, ensuring security. Then we end up creating rules and regulations that can institutionalize it within an organization. Then we can assess the impact, define other strategies to be able to enforce its benefits and enforce the outcomes, be able to make sure that we can sustain the benefits and outcomes we are gaining from the technology. That will also bring us to some strategic decisions like aligning it with the organization and then going beyond that, establishing policies that may be needed around it that can help encourage people to continue using the system, because we can evaluate. Sometimes there can be resistance and abandonment. We'll do our reporting and then we get maybe a success out of it. Now, all these things are different concepts in information in the use of technology. Somebody can do a research on the need aspect. Somebody can do a research on the investment aspect. Somebody can do a research on its use. I think most of the research people have been hearing about is diffusion, innovation, and adoption of information systems. Others can do the strategy of the technology. Others can understand resistance. Why do some people not use technology? Others can understand, try to explore is continuous. What will cause people to continue to use the technology? Others can evaluate. Others can try to see what determines the success of the use of technology. Others can study the security dimension. Somebody can study the development dimension, the design dimension, or then and try to even look at the differences in acquisition. What ways do people firms acquire technology? Maybe through outsourcing, through in-house development, through purchasing off the shelf. So there could be so many dimensions of what you say. Somebody can study policy or alignment of technology within the organization. So the concepts here are not necessarily in a linear format. We are just putting them here for you to know that if you want to do information systems research, you can start from any of these concepts. So there's diverse concepts you can have. Somebody can even study need in a particular domain. For example, I want to study the need for procurement systems, or the need for hospital management systems, or the need for financial management system, or even somebody can even study adoption issues, the impact of financial literacy on the use of financial systems. So many things can be studied, but you need to realize that you start from any of these concepts can give you a direction of what you're going to study about the technology. So the concepts I are putting here as a basket for you to know that research in information system can start for any dimension: policy dimension, continuous dimension, training, acquisition, adoption, diffusion. Now, when you have the concept in mind, you can ask yourself that, am I studying a new concept, or am I studying an old concept? Or am I studying a mixture of them? So there could be new concepts. For example, this whole thing about technology, like let's say artificial intelligence. Somebody can try to say gender issues in the use of, or gender bias in the use of technology, artificial intelligence. I have a new technology that I want to try, but gender studies in information is not new, but I can combine that one with the technology, so that's AI, and then come up with a hybrid type of concept I build understanding gender biases in artificial intelligence adoption. Then you ask yourself that, what are the questions are you going to ask? Are you asking new questions or old questions? Questions that exist already in the literature, or new questions that others have told you to actually study? So sometimes somebody may replicate a study the question. For example, I did my PhD on the resources and how they help firms to be able to gain advantage, or be able to generate e-commerce benefits amidst their constraints. Now, if that's what I'm trying to, I did my study on. I was studying resources, I was studying e-commerce benefits, and I was studying it within the constraints of what developing countries face. Somebody can say that, okay, I'm going to do the same research. Instead of studying e-commerce, I want to study a different type of artificial business. So resources, AI businesses, and then the deployment of the use of resources to gain value in AI oriented businesses, maybe something like that. So in that case, I'm asking questions, I'm combining an old question with a new domain, and I can have a new type of study I want to do. Now, I remember that in the research that I did, one of the things I found out was that, does IS research need non-IS resources to be able to generate value? So when you have a technology, you have to combine it with other type of resources in organization to generate value. Most of my research said yes. So the technology can combine with the people resources, and then the financial resources to be able to generate value for the organization. Somebody can also try to do a similar study on how do government resources affect the deployment of technology for citizens. So how do government resources affect the deployment of technologies or systems for citizens? So now the outcome, we are trying to develop, let's say, a voting platform, and I want to say the way I want to explore the resources that are available to organization, to government, and how it affects the deployment of such a voting platform. Okay, so if government doesn't have money and he has to borrow from, or has to be able to collaborate with international organizations to be able to get money for this voting platform, we can explore those things. What kind of ways do government raise funds to support technology projects in the justice system, or technology projects for democracy? So this could be something that somebody may want to do. So I may have to also choose a domain. The fact that I have a concept and I have a question does not necessarily mean that I know where to apply it. So I can ask the same question, like the adoption of information system, but which domain do I want to study? I give an example, like in democracy, or in voting, or even in governance, or in hospital administration, or even even in mining, or even going further to look into adoption of the technology, even in school settings or in the university setting or for learning purposes. So the domain have to be looked at in terms of maybe more of the industry or the sector that you want to apply this particular concept in and the questions that you are asking. Then I have to choose the appropriate theory that can help me to understand the concept. If it's adoption, what adoption theories can I need? Do I want to use existing adoption theories? I want to reject them and go and study a different dimension of adoption. Maybe I want to study how people make the steps that people go through to make decisions or decision making theories that can inform the way we actually use information systems in the hospital setting. So now I have to look at what are the decision making theories that exist, or what theories exist concerning how human beings make decisions. I can go to psychology, I can go to other different types of research, even organizational thinking research, and then try to draw from that to be able to apply to what I'm trying to do. The method, am I going to use qualitative, quantitative, or I'm going to use a mixture of both? I can even start by examining previous studies on adoption and then in the hospital sector. What kind of theories, what kind of methods have they used? Is there a dominance of quantitative or qualitative? And if there's dominant quantitative, are there new questions I can ask if I want to go to quantitative? If there is less attention on qualitative and I want to use qualitative, what are the new questions I can ask on existing questions that have not been addressed that I can address? Then I have to place a context. Am I studying it in Ghana? Even in Ghana? Am I studying it in a particular locality? Am I studying it in rural or urban environment? Because if I'm looking at the deployment of hospital technology or use technology in healthcare, and I'm studying it at a rural environment, what kind of technologies am I really talking about? Good. Maybe and then it may draw my mind to telemedicine and try to understand how telemedicine impacts on healthcare delivery in rural settings. So the context can also have an influence on the study I do. Then the contribution, contributions am I going to make out of it? Out of the long essay, the thesis or the long essay I'm carrying out, I may come out with some theoretical findings. That may inform the future research in terms of theory. I may also come up with some findings that can inform future research in terms of practice and future practice decisions or practice implications. For example, how should managers look at this phenomenon after I've done my research? How does it affect the behavior of policymakers? Then I can also study it in terms of the dimension of policy, as I've just mentioned. So we can have different types of contribution that can come from my study. What kind of contributions can I get from the study I've done? Then if I finish the study, what should future research do? What does my study affect future research? Now, all we are trying to say is that when you are carrying out research and you are looking for the right questions to ask, you can ask questions around concepts, you can ask questions around theory. For example, it is possible that the existing studies on mobile payments have all been using technology-based theories, but nobody has used maybe a psychological theory, which is maybe parasocial behaviors or parasocial interaction theory. Try to draw from parasocial interaction theory and apply it to mobile payment platforms or mobile payment interactions or transactions. It may be an interesting perspective for me to consider. So you can ask questions on the context. You can ask questions on the future research directions that others have left before for you. Whichever research you are trying to do, note that you can ask either do the carry out the study from the perspective of the concept, from the perspective of the questions, from the perspective of the domain, the theory, the method, the context, the existing contributions or future contributions, and then the research directions. I can simply see that maybe existing research have pointed out that policymakers do know how to appropriate IS resource, information system resources. So what makes policy makers fail in appropriating IS resources, appropriating IS in a correct manner, or in a manner that is much more cost effective? That could be a question I'm starting from. But if I take that kind of question, I have to be very careful how I'm going to approach it, because now I'm talking about the use of information systems among policymakers. What kind of approach can I use to collect data? What kind of theory will I need? What kind of questions can I ask? And then what kind of other concept can I add to be able to carry out this study? Now, so when you have a concept You have to determine the right questions, determine the right domain you want to study in. Even then in the domain, you may want to even either choose the type of technology you want to study, or you may choose an aspect of technology you want to study. For example, I give an idea that maybe adoption of AI by SMEs. The concept is adoption. I'm trying to study a technology called AI, but I choose what questions am I asking? Why do SME managers adopt AI in their business? So I have to ask myself, what I'm talking about SME, which is a type of business in a type of business category. But where am I applying? Is it manufacturing? Or am I looking at SMEs who are into retail? Am I looking at SMEs who are into graphic design? Maybe. So depending on the type of what I choose, it can affect the type of AI study. If I go and choose SMEs which are into retail, I may be leaning towards social media and how social media platforms are being used by SMEs and how they integrate AI into that, into the activities such as content creation to be able to enhance their engagement with their customers. That could be what I will end up asking. So if I interact these factors, you may start with a question in mind, but as you start looking at the domain, start looking at the type of technology, and start looking at the concept, the questions can even change. And as you start reading more, you can have a better understanding. Sometimes you may go and pick up a theory. The theory can even change the way you want to look at the same issue. I'm talking about AI and SME. When I go and choose a theory like the signaling theory, that talks about the fact that when signals are emanated, people who the recipient tend to see, interpret the signals according to certain parameters, and in the interpretation of the signals, it can inform the decision that the recipient can actually take. Now, if I take the signaling theory and I then look at the receiver, I look at the signals that are being communicated, and I look at the different ways that people take decisions around the signals that they interpret. I can come up with so many perspectives that I may carry out to do my own study. For example, if I look at pictures in the intention to use a technology, it could come from the fact that I'm observing the signals in which the person who developed the technology is actually showcasing or selling or actually communicating through the online platforms I've gone to. I go to somebody's social and a YouTube page. I see somebody talking about maybe Zoom and how Zoom has AI in it that can actually transcribe what you're actually when you're having a Zoom meeting, can transcribe it. Now I am being drawn to the AI features which are within Zoom, but it's being communicated through a video for me to be able to understand it. And there are certain things he's doing right. That is enhancing interaction, enhancing my engagement. So the engagement signal and the interaction signal can influence my decision making, whether I will buy Zoom or install Zoom or even choose to use Zoom within my organization. That's what I'm talking about. So if I choose a signaling theory, it can change the type of questions I even ask. Then I choose the method. If I'm going qualitative, the nature of my research will be designed to be able to answer qualitative type of questions and gain qualitative type of data. If my questions are about quantitative, then I have to come up with most of it come up with hypothesis that how does maybe interaction has a positive influence on adoption decisions of SMEs when it comes to AI. That may be what I may end up saying. Then I have to choose the context, whether I'm applying to Ghana. Then when I carry out the research, I may end up coming up with certain findings which may contribute to knowledge, and then I may end up coming up with future research that other future researchers can consider when they are starting their research. So your concept has a key role to play in your study. The questions can influence the concept. The domain can influence the questions and the concept. The type of technology can affect the domain, can affect the questions, and can affect the concept. The theory you choose can affect everything that it precedes. So it can affect the type of technology, the domain, the questions, and the concept. And all of these things can also affect the theory or shape the theory that you choose. Then the method you choose to carry out to do your study can be informed by your theory, can be informed by the type of technology, can be informed by the domain, can be informed by the questions, and can be informed by concept. If I want to study how doctors use AI in their medical practice, and I want to go quantitative. That means that at the end of the day, I have to have a quantitative questionnaire and just give it to the doctors. But the doctors may want to tell me more because quantitative may not be able to explain the process that they go through in actually using the AI. Hence, I maybe end up having to change the type of questions that I want to use, and even choose the type of doctors I want to study because I want to be able to meaningfully engage with them. So that these things can affect the way I theorize, the way I choose the type of technology, the way I choose the domain, the questions, and the concepts. Then the context I'm going to do the study in, that being whether it's a Ghana or it's a it's a locality, a rural or urban area. All this can inform the study I am doing. Then that will lead to my contributions and then my future research directions. So if you are carrying out an IS research, note that the concept you have in mind can influence by the concept, the method, the theory, the type of technology, the domain, the questions. Then when you are doing these things, you also remember that in case your mind is contributing more to practice, it can affect the way you do your method. If your mind is contributing more to theory, it will affect the way you theorize. I hope you understand me. So whenever you are carrying out an IS research, it's not just about the selection of theory. The theory selection can influence by the method, can also be influenced by the type of study, the type of technology you're studying, the domain, the questions, and the concepts. Okay. So in a nutshell, how then do you select a theory? First of all, ask yourself, what is the concept or phenomena I'm trying to study? Like we looked at. What theories have been used to study those concepts of phenomena in the past? Now, what are the existing critiques of the theory and how and that you have to identify? Which of them can give you an opportunity which only can give you opportunity for contribution based on the research area and the context or even the given data. And then what discipline that you belong to? And then do you really understand the concept, the theory, the logic, and the assumption of the theory? How can you measure them? These are the things that we'll ask you to do when you are starting the study. Next week, what we'll do is to now start looking at how the theories get changed and then start looking at different IS theories and how we can apply them. Thank you very much. I hope you understand what we do in selecting a theory now. Thank you for spending time to listen.